Hello there everyone, it's Christy, and I am here with what will probably be the last update on Mythicist Milwaukee. Those of you who have been following the drama know that Mythicist Milwaukee are having a conference. It's happening tomorrow in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they have invited as representatives of skepticism Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, the man who left when Heather of the Skeptic Feminist was murdered in a hangout live on air for more than an hour. There's also the issue that, he has organized online harassment campaigns. He admitted to a British newspaper that he planned to target Jess Phillips for some sort of online harassment, and that turned out to be the "I wouldn't even rape you" tweet that was retweeted at her over 600 times, people debating whether or not they would even rape her. He doxed a woman for wearing a feminist t-shirt. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we know what a scumbag Carl is. The organizers of the conference went on a podcast and tried to defend their decision to invite Carl, and they totally undermined their own position. They exposed that they're really just in it for the ticket sales. They don't care about the morality of it. They don't care what the face of atheism or skepticism are in the States. What they really want to do is appeal to exactly the kinds of people that Carl appeals to, and they want that to be the future of skepticism and atheism. And that's kind of what I took away from it. So I contacted the person who put on the podcast, Callie. She's amazing. There will be links to her podcast on Spreaker. I don't know, German is influencing the way I pronounce a word these days. It's probably in English Spreaker, but when I see it, the German in me wants to go Spreaker. Anyway, she does a great job. She does a fantastic job of holding their feet to the fire and really pressing them on the moral question. It's not just about ticket sales. It's about the morality that we want to present to America, that there is an alternative to religious morality. So this morning I woke up and someone had alerted me by tagging me into a message that Mythicist Milwaukee had posted a tweet celebrating the fact that Amos Yee was going to be attending their conference. Now, Amos is pretty much known as a big-time free speech advocate in those circles, in the anti-feminist, anti-progressive values circles, which Mythicist Milwaukee have clearly tied themselves to. But Amos Yee has said disgusting, immoral, and reprehensible things about having sex with children and child pornography. This is how bad Amos Yee is. Andy Worski made a video telling him his views were disgusting. But I'll go ahead and link that just, as evidence that this isn't just some sort of liberal screaming. I will also put up shots in the screenshots of the things he said. Now, this happened around 2016, about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. And maybe Amos has made public comments retracting those things. I couldn't find them. He might have, done interviews where he repudiates his views and admits that he was completely in error. I haven't been able to find them. What I have been able to find is usually responses to the comments and no mention of an apology or no mention of a retraction. And I have to just say, I'm shocked. I was shocked at the optics for a conference that was already under criticism for hosting a man who routinely harasses women online, who's known as an abuser. And then the Mythicist Milwaukee guys appeared on Bearing's channel, who is also pretty much defined by the fact that his channel is a source for a lot of anti-feminist harassment. And he even uses sexually degrading a name for me. And they were aware of this and went on his show anyway. Then they go on to the podcast that I'm about to introduce to you and bomb and basically describe themselves as sellouts. If you listen to it all the way through, they're really just selling out. They don't care about the morality of what Carl does. And just to put the icing on the cake, to really solidify this idea that they don't care about the misogyny that they're supporting and associating with, they go ahead and fet a guy who has made comments about children. If children consent, then sex with children is okay. I can't be a worse enemy to Mythicist Milwaukee than they are to themselves. And they do that by who they associate with and what they present as the face of their organization. And what they present as the face of their organization is really a complete dismissal of harassment, online harassment, of amoral positions under the guise of free speech is everything. It's just disgusting. So I know for all of the victories that I do feel that I have, and with others we have worked to achieve, Aaron Raw dropping out, Seth dropping out, they talk about in the podcast the fact that their ticket sales are down. I think all of these for me are, I didn't realize how important it was going to be to stand up to Mythicist Milwaukee. I didn't know the dark soul of misogyny, of tolerating rape-themed led harassment against women online, in their view, is just entertainment. And you'll hear that in the podcast. So, as I'm going to stop rambling, and I will now let you get to the podcast, and let me tell you a little bit more about it. The woman you'll be hearing is Callie. The podcast is part of the series of the Atheist Manifesto. Links to the podcast page so you can check out all of their podcasts will be provided below. And Callie very kindly allowed me to mirror the content. So thank you, Callie. I really appreciate it. I think she did a fantastic job. I really, really do. She was far calmer than I would have been. She had done a lot of research. I'm just going to do a quick correction though. I mean, I understand when you're speaking spontaneously in a hangout, you don't always have the opportunity to have all the facts to hand. But just to correct the record, Jess Phillips lists what happened to her as a sexual assault. The other thing is she was launching, it was called Reclaim the Internet, and it was about online harassment, including misogyny. But that the Reclaim the Internet was the thing that Carl used. He said he had been planning on targeting Jess Phillips for a long time, and that was what he chose as his reaction point, where he made that about, I wouldn't even rape you. I think that's all I really want to say. If there's anything else, I will put it in the comment section below. But instead of listening to me, let's get on with the beautiful destruction, really, of the Mythicist Milwaukee organizers. There's also a blog post on The Orbit that was written in response to this exchange. I will link that below as well. It's also a very good read. And all I will say in terms of prepping you guys to listen to the Mythicist Milwaukee guys' side of things, Brian and Sean are going to try to compare Carl to Bill Maher. Carl is not Bill Maher. And Sarah Silverman. Carl is not Sarah Silverman. I think it's important to remember that Carl started a harassment campaign online. This isn't about him being on air or in a hangout and saying something offensive. He does that anyway. We know that about him. And they want to equate what Bill Maher does with abuse online. And they want to say that telling women they wouldn't even rape them is entertainment. And I disagree with those comments. All right, all that's left to be said is that I've been Christy, you've been awesome. Enjoy the podcast. I'll see you again really soon. Bye-bye.
Hey friends, a quick note at the beginning here. This is not a normal episode of the Atheist Manifesto. It's an extra episode because this kind of stuff is not the sort of show we promise our listeners typically, but I thought it was an important conversation to have. Just being super honest and vulnerable here, I'm not super confident in my debate skills. I'm not super confident that these conversations are even worthwhile or effective, but I felt compelled to do this, so I did. I've already thought of a million things I wish I'd have said and didn't. I hope I did well, and I sincerely apologize if I failed. This episode contains far stronger language than usual, a far angrier Callie than usual, and lots of references to rape, sexual assault, ableism, and other generally sorts of shitty things, just to give a heads up. Our conversation will be presented here without editing and without any additional commentary aside from this note here at the very beginning. Here we go. Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Atheist Manifesto. Gonna dispense with a lot of the pageantry and the Patreon ads and the outros and all that sort of stuff, because this is kind of an extra episode for this week. Anybody who pays attention to the atheist movement and the drama that happens therein has probably heard of the controversy surrounding the Mythicist Milwaukee conference. I have certainly heard of it and participated in some of it myself, as have lots of my friends and lots of people I'm not so fond of. And I would imagine anyone who knows anything about the show knows where I stand. I have Sean and Brian here. Sean and Brian, just to be clear, you two are the organizers of the con, right?
Yep. I'm a co-founder of Mythicist Milwaukee, and Brian's one of the directors.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure. So the reason that this is an extra episode and not a regular episode is because I try not to make our show a debate show. I'm more education, advocacy, lifting people up, creating space, creating community, that kind of stuff. But I think this is an important conversation to have. There are certain conversations that I would choose not to have and certain conversations that I would choose to have. And frankly, at the top of this conversation, I'm not even sure that I'm going to leave this conversation feeling like it was worth it. But I feel like the effort is worth it, if that makes sense. So,
thanks.
So just to give a basic history for anyone who maybe hasn't followed the whole thing. So the Mythicist Milwaukee conference, it's a conference happening obviously in Milwaukee, and debuting a movie, and they've got speakers just like any other con. The controversy surrounding this conference has to do with the invited guests. Obviously, YouTube's Carl Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad. Greg, I can't remember his last name, Armored Skeptic, and June Lapine, I think is her last name, Shuan Head, and Melissa Chen, I believe, is the other one. And frankly, these are not popular people in our movement, and I think for very, very good reasons. And especially Sargon of Akkad. And knowing the history of his behavior, I was very interested to read the Mythicist Milwaukee Conference Code of Conduct. And I'm going to quote part of that here. Prohibited conduct includes, but is not limited to, harassment based on race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or any other protected group status as provided by local, state, or federal law. By way of example, abusive conduct directed at someone because of their race is prohibited. Prohibited conduct includes, but is not limited to, sexual harassment. By way of example, unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of an unwelcome sexual nature are prohibited. So I want to keep that in context for the discussions to follow. And the reason why I found that very interesting is because one of the most famous reasons, or one of the reasons that Sargon of Akkad is most famous, is because he tweeted the phrase, "I wouldn't even rape you," to a British MP, which then followed, she says, roughly 600 tweets, tweeting rape threats at her, tweeting descriptions of her own rape to her. And, if this was a guy trolling, trying to have fun, things got too far, he didn't really mean for it to happen, then we might expect an apology. But the best that he could do was, "I'm not going to lie. I was trying to be provocative. I wasn't being respectful. I was being condescending and childish." And the thing you guys got to help me understand is why this isn't a deal breaker for you and an invited guest to a conference.
Okay. So our code of conduct is going to cover at our conference, at
Correct.
any of our meetings, whether you're on an organizer and our team organizing meetings, whether you're at our bi-weekly or our semi-monthly meetups, and we're going to do that. Like, I don't think we have authority necessarily to police everything that happens everywhere. So I'm not directly involved. So it's hard for me a little bit to adjudicate, something that happens online. I have not talked to Jess Phillips, so I don't really know her views.
But is that relevant? Are her views relevant? Because we're not really talking about anything she did.
Right. Well, but I think the bigger argument with what happened with Sargon, first of all, like you said, it's bad bits. He's being childish, and entertainers thrive on controversy, and that's what Sargon is. That's what Armored Shoe, Melissa Chen. That's what I argue. Any podcaster, vlogger, anybody is. They're entertainers, and when you are in that world, controversy sells. And yeah, what did he go? Maybe take it a little too far, maybe. But this is what
maybe
entertainers.
Did he maybe take it too far? Is that honestly where you're at with that?
Here's the thing. I would love to have Sarah Silverman at our next conference. Sarah Silverman has a bit about how Mexicans are filthy, And am I going to hold that over her head for her entire career? This is just a bad bit. A lot of comedians go through this where they have bad bits, and that's just part of learning the trade, perfecting the art.
Right, but when they do that, they usually come out and say that they've had a change of heart, they apologize, they understand why they did was wrong, they plan on doing better in the future. But we're not talking about Sarah Silverman, and I'm not defending anything that Sarah Silverman has had to say, so I'm not sure that's relevant.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is relevant because it's in the world of entertainment. Griffin was forced to apologize after that bit she did with Trump's head. Is that right? I don't think she should have.
Right, but here's we're kind of deflecting away from the original point here. I mean, we're talking about a guy who incited rape threats against someone who, by the way, the reason that he tweeted this is because this woman is a rape survivor who was spearheading an online campaign against misogyny and against sexual violence. And that was his response. So we're not talking about other people here. We're talking about this guy and the guy that you invited to your conference.
Right. And we invited him as an entertainer, somebody that has been wildly successful in the entertainment world. That's why I'm using the analogies in the entertainment world.
And and to your point, I would need to talk in depth with Sargon and in depth with Jess Phillips to get it. And
would
also,
you really though?
Why?
Like honestly,
yeah, because you've kind of suggested his motive, right?
Does that matter though?
For it, yeah, motive matters. It absolutely does. I mean, that's why we have Murder 1 and Murder 2 and Murder 3. Motive absolutely matters.
Right, but we're not talking about putting people in jail. We're talking about who we're going to invite to our large platforms. That's not the same thing.
But I know I'd ask, who does he owe the apology to? Yeah. Does he owe it to me or Sean or you, Callie? I think he would owe that to Jess and not anybody else. And I don't know whether that has happened or not. Yeah. I don't know if Jess Phillips is still upset about this. I would have to talk to all of them.
But also to say an atheist conference is a large platform is completely inaccurate. First of all, atheist conferences are not mainstream. Atheism is controversial in itself. And to say that we're offering him, he has over 700,000 followers on YouTube. He already has a large platform. So bringing him into the situation where someone like you or someone in the audience could ask exactly that question that you just asked is in my opinion, is definitely where we want him to be.
I mean, I don't understand why that doesn't cross a line, right? Because there are obviously going to be lines, right? Like I'm guessing, for example, if somebody had made a bunch of videos saying like, I love the Holocaust and the Holocaust is awesome, like you probably wouldn't be super stoked on that, right? And I'm not saying that's like on the same level as him, but what I'm trying to suggest is I'm sure there is a line. Am I right about that or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's a line.
Okay, so I'm wondering why inciting harassment of a rape victim is not over the line.
You're saying inciting,
right?
Did he ask his followers to go in time? Did he say everybody ought to do this? I mean, but what's inciting?
Right.
I mean, he did something that he's responsible for, but I just don't see the inciting part.
I mean, I don't see how you don't see it, because here's the thing. If, for example, I say something like, I think what the organizers of MythCon are doing is a terrible thing. I think it's a bad idea and I think it's hurtful. That's criticism, right? But if I say, well, I wouldn't even rape those guys, like that's not the same thing.
Right. No, and we've actually had worse happen. We've had a lot of people that have contacted our venue, called us rape apologists, called us white nationalists, called us all these things.
Threatened to dox the entire
audience, threatened the
veiled threats of violence.
Yeah, to the point where we've had to spend thousands of dollars extra of security at the conference. And guess what? That didn't come from Armored Shoe or Sargon. And if we're going to talk about tactics, there is a much bigger problem in this world and in atheism as a whole, as I see it, because I understand that you don't agree with what Sargon says. That's great. So you have two options.
No. We're not going to frame it as disagreement, because disagreement is like, that's why I'm not talking about someone like Melissa Chen, right? I've scrolled through her Twitter feed. I know what her views are. I think they're crap. But as far as I know, she's never made money from harassing people. So she's someone I disagree with. We can have the conversation about disagreement when we're talking about that context. When we're talking about somebody who used to tweet out memes making fun of domestic violence and making fun of rape and using autism as an insult against feminists, that's not disagreement. Like that's way past disagreement.
Autism, I see that. I think people on the left and the right, people use autism all the time.
But
I mean, so
we're not talking about people. We're talking about this specific person who did this specific thing. If anyone else did it, I would be criticizing them as well. But they're not the ones who are invited to your con, so we're not going to talk about other people.
Well, understood. But you also have to hold people to certain standards. Like, for instance, our conference is being held to a standard where we're not challenging Armored and Shoe on stage. That's not a standard that exists. Other conferences don't challenge all of their guests on stage. So there is a little bit of hypocrisy here. Again, Sargon's coming in. Not only is he on stage, we're challenging him. Thomas Smith is going to be up there, so Thomas Smith can talk all about this thing with the Twitter or whatever. So it's not like,
and he's going to.
So I mean, isn't that a better scenario than having somebody sit in an echo chamber and, as you say, harass others constantly without being challenged? I mean, isn't this what we should be looking for in the atheist world?
I mean, well, let me go back to something that you said earlier, because I said something about it being a big platform, and you disagreed with that, saying that you didn't think it was a big platform. So I mean, if let's say for a second that I agree with you that it's not a big platform, then, why would it matter to do that? I mean, why is this guy the representation of the other side of the argument? Because I'm not even saying that, we shouldn't have these debates, we shouldn't have these conversations, which is why I'm not screaming about, Armored Skeptic, because, he at least has videos about skepticism, and his views that I think are shitty and wrong, as far as I know, like I said, he doesn't harass people, and he doesn't, make outrageous, like, trollish comments to people. So, that's why I'm not yelling about him.
Sure.
But my question is, why is he the guy? Knowing this history, because I mean, you're framing him as an entertainer, right? But you're a skeptic conference. You're supposed to be having a conversation about skepticism, and I don't understand why he's the guy.
Okay, so that's a good point. Yeah, we should be talking about skepticism. How do you popularize skepticism? Who has done more for the atheist movement? Or if we look at George Carlin, has he not done a huge benefit to the atheist movement? If we look at Jim Jeffries or Bill Maher, have they not done huge, benefits to the atheism as a whole? Entertainment is the way that you spread a message. Entertainment is the way that you popularize something. And the best entertainers are able to take controversial material and utilize it to their advantage. But, if you look at Bill Maher and those that have huge platforms that are also talking about atheism, that's normalizing it. And one of our goals with our organization is to start bringing in more entertainers, because honestly, Callie, if you go to any of the atheist conferences, and again, we go to a lot of them because that we have to do our research and development, and we throw our own. People are sick of the same old God doesn't exist, and here's why. Here's why the Christians are wrong. Here's why the Muslims are wrong. That's kind of getting to the point where it's played out. If you look at the major conferences and just talk to any of the organizers, all of the attendance is down. And I'm not just saying like down like 10%. I'm saying like way down. And in order for this model to survive, you have to start bringing in newer elements. And, Family Guy is another perfect example. Seth MacFarlane, huge atheist, has done huge good for atheism. Having him at a conference, having someone who is an entertainer that can relate to the masses, brings in more of a popular mainstream audience into this world, because I think people will find value in what we're doing. But if we keep preaching to ourselves and we don't start bringing in outside influencers, it's not going to last. So why Sargon? Sargon's an atheist, and he has a huge platform. He's wildly successful in his own right. Why not Sargon? I understand what you're saying about the Twitter and all these other things, but guess what? There's been entertainers that troll each other all the time. That's just the way the world goes. And
right, that is the way the world goes, but that's also not a justification for inviting him to your conference. But
I just told you why, because he's an entertainer and he has a huge platform and he can reach millions of people. That's why we want to bring him in.
Right, but I mean, in order for that to be justified in my mind, there has to be something else of value there, because, as far as I can see, he's a shock jock. Someone like Bill Maher, for all his faults, I'm not a Bill Maher fan, but he's a smart guy and he brings a lot to the table, as well as being an entertainer. And again, I also got to point out that he doesn't make a habit of justifying domestic violence, making fun of rape victims, insulting people by calling them autistic, that kind of stuff. So, I hear what you're saying, and as a matter of fact, that's why I think the Scathing Atheist and Gam guys are so popular, because they're hilarious. They're entertainers, right? They're not necessarily thought leaders, but again, they don't incite harassment against people. They don't go after people. So that's, that's the difference here.
Well, and just, if you're going to use Bill Maher as an example, he lost his show on ABC for making a really bad joke about 9/11. He's used the N-word. He's done other things on his show that people would see as offensive. And again, do we say all of his work is now obsolete because Bill Maher made a mistake in the past? People make mistakes. And when you're an entertainer, I know a lot of comedians in the LA world, in Chicago, New York, and when you're going up there with new material, you're trying out new material, you fail more than you succeed. And you always want to live on the edge, and you want to live like on that controversial world to where it's like edgy but funny, because that's where the comedians, that's where entertainers live, is right in that gray area of too edgy and funny at the same time. And yeah, as entertainers, they've made terrible just look at the last year and how many entertainers made terrible mistakes in bits that they do. I personally, being a fan of the entertainment world and the comedy world specifically, I don't hold those people to that, because, again, you're going to make mistakes. Even in our podcast, we've said things that maybe we didn't mean. Maybe, it's just a mistake. It is what it is. I'm not going to hold somebody to that and say they're the worst person in the world. I don't want anything to do with them, even though there's a lot of other value and benefit that can be from that mutual relationship. And Sargon is one of those controversial characters. Callie, you have to admit this, or I've what other conference has been talked about this much? What other atheist conference? Again, we're getting in the face of people. This is an atheist conference. What other conference has been under the microscope this much? And I'm not saying, and it's even funnier, Callie. It's like we have 1,400 seats. We've sold 400 tickets. Out of a conference that has been talked about the most, we still have a low turnout. And this is where, this model, if we wanted to succeed, we have to start thinking outside the box. And yeah, sometimes that's controversial. And, we just got to make sure that, because I want to see these things continue. And I want to put on the best show that I can. And again, with Sargon, we're challenging him. He's not up there doing a bit on his own. He's being challenged. So why wouldn't we want to see that?
And to the other point, I've seen him debate a number of social justice advocates online very fairly. He conducts himself, I think I've watched a ton of his debates, and he's very reasonable and polite in those. And I've listened to hours worth of content where Sargon is very monotone and almost boring. We're talking about John Stuart Mill and liberalism and values like this, that he is just talking about politics where he's not swearing, he's not doing anything. It's almost boring. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more. So I would challenge the shock jock only.
Yeah. And
there's
go ahead.
The fact that, so like, I'm a trans podcaster. That's generally speaking why people know me. That's not all I am. I talk about Star Trek a lot. That's not what people know me for. And if we're talking about Sargon of Akkad and the reason he's popular, we're taking your reason for his for his being invited to the conference, that he's popular, that he's wildly successful. I think it's only fair to admit that he's not wildly successful for his boring monotone discussions of John Stuart Mill and classical liberalism. Like, that's not why people watch Sargon of Akkad. People watch him for his takedown videos. People watch him for his shock value. That's why he's popular.
Right. But you brought up a great example in the Gamcast and the Scathing Atheist guys. Eli Bosnick will on a whim say he wants to rape a child. Now, is that being a shock jock? Kind of. Is that toying with controversy? Absolutely. So again, why are we saying Sargon is worse than people that are in our world already?
Because Eli
you've been
Bosnick is not responding to a fucking rape victim campaigning against rape. That's a fucking insulting comparison to make.
Sure. Okay, so saying that you want to rape a child is not insulting to somebody that has gone through that experience as well?
I'm not a fan of that joke, and Eli knows that. Eli's a friend of mine, but the comparison is insulting because you're talking about somebody making a joke with no context of actually communicating with a rape victim versus someone who said that directly to a rape victim in the context of her campaigning against rape and misogyny. Not the same thing, not even close.
When Eli says that on his podcast, Callie, that goes to thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that could have lived through that, especially in the atheist world where you have a lot of people coming.
No. He's not speaking directly to an individual person who is on a campaign against rape and him responding directly to that person. Those are two completely different contexts.
Right. But if you think, so is your assertion that he's pro-rape or he doesn't care about rape victims?
I mean, that's the way that it seems. Or the most charitable that I can possibly be is that he doesn't care to use it as a weapon to shock people, which in my mind is not a lot better.
Right. But you use the word seems there, right? And fine. And I think that's fine. And that's a good word to use because you didn't say you're absolutely sure. I'll bet you my bottom dollar that Thomas Smith asks him this on stage. And we have a chance, and Thomas Smith has a chance to get out what other context might be there. Again, I have not talked to Sargon about this in depth. I have not talked to Jess Phillips about this in depth. Mm-hmm. Were there other political issues going in that this was a part of? I don't know.
What difference does that make? What difference could that possibly make?
Well, for example, Sargon has a video where he was telling the story of, I think there was the UVA case with the mattress girl, or they were talking about the woman who had carried the mattress around. And it's an example of what Sargon believes is overreach by Title IX and the new the laws on campus on how to adjudicate rape. And people were calling him a rape apologist for this when what he was saying is you cannot get justice for rape victims by punishing the innocent. So again, with Jess Phillips, I don't know exactly what her politics were, but if they are anything similar to Title IX, he may very well be criticizing the politics and not rape.
So I wouldn't even rape you is a legitimate criticism.
But I mean, if we're going to focus on this one thing, again, he's come out and said he was being childish and foolish. And again, as you know, the more you talk online, the more likely it is you are going to say something ridiculous, something that you didn't mean to. And again, we have the opportunity to ask him that question. If you're saying because of that one comment, do we not give him a platform? Absolutely not. Because again, he has over 700,000 followers already. He has a platform. What's the difference if he shows up in front of 400 people and is challenged? I think we're going to get more out of that than him just talking to his audience or writing tweets. Our whole thing is about discourse and conversation and talking about these uncomfortable things. And the other thing we're hearing is, atheist conferences need to just focus on atheism. Well, that model's been proven to be, it was very important years ago, and now it's proven to be a dying model. And culture and politics is where all of these things go, because they're all interconnected. Religion, culture, politics, all these things are connected. So it's like, I'm an atheist, now what? Now you start looking at cultural questions. Now you're looking at the political landscape. I mean, politics has invaded atheism just like it's invaded everything else. Sports, the furry community, all these other things. I mean,
yeah. And I don't mean to cut you off, but honestly, you're preaching to the choir on that one. You're talking to someone who goes to atheist conferences to talk about trans stuff. I've had that argument used against me too. So I think if there's a thing we agree on, it's that the whole, like, if it's an atheist conference, you should only talk about atheism. That's bullshit. We're lockstep on that.
We're getting hit hard on that. I mean, that's why Sargon, why Armored, why Shu, why Ron Miscavige. Ron Miscavige escaped Scientology. I think Scientology should be a part of what we're talking about. He's the father of David Miscavige. This is what we should be talking about too, because this is a whole area of people we could, as the atheist world, could support And I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing, where are we with the ex-Scientologists? I've heard maybe a couple of people covered on their podcast, There's a lot of other things we could be focused on. And, we're trying to bring that into the fold. We're trying to bring different topics to the fold so people can start talking about it,
Right.
Well, right. And I don't fault you for that, for the idea. But I'm stuck on this guy as the symbol of that. Because you keep talking about how, entertainers, sometimes they go too far. Sometimes they do things and it falls flat and so on. And I get that because I've done the same thing. I try to be funny and I accidentally hurt somebody. Or, I say something without thinking things through. Like, I get that. I've been there. I've done that. And I've been on the receiving end of that and I've been on the giving end of that. So I'm 100% with you there. But I mean, frankly, that's not what we're talking about here. I mean, the guy admitted that he was being condescending and childish. And that was that was the best that he could be bothered for an apology. And this is also, let's not forget, the guy who looks at Richard Spencer and says, that's our guy. So if you're having problems with the white nationalists and the Nazi comparison, frankly, I don't think it's that much of a leap to make.
Okay, that one I'm going to challenge you on, Callie. That I know is out of context. Do you the R guy specifically? Are you familiar with the context on this? This one I'm very familiar with.
Maybe I'm not. I'm willing to hear it out.
So what he's saying there is this comes into, and I'm sorry if this is going to get a bit esoteric. The Kekistani flag, which is a flag that satires the Nazi flag. This is an anti-identity politics flag. And Richard Spencer is not exactly the smartest guy in the world. And what Richard Spencer wants to do is kind of tie everything around and kind of co-opt a lot of things to make the alt-right seem bigger than it is. And he's like, we should adopt the Kekistani flag. And a lot of his followers are like, no, don't, because the alt-right is playing identity politics. They're just playing in an unfamiliar direction from left to right. And what Spencer is kind of doing is that we should adopt that. That's cool. Yeah. He's mocking Richard Spencer by saying, see, to all his fans, he's our guy. Like he's saying Richard Spencer doesn't even know what he's talking about. Yeah. And like Sargon goes after the alt-right. Yeah. He got kicked off Twitter for harassing the alt-right. So, I mean, if you're going to harass anyone, it seems like that the alt-right seems to be a good target. I mean, he's done good investigative journalism on that. He pisses the alt-right off all the time. Like he gets consistent 3,000 downvotes from when he makes his videos that are against the alt-right. Those are the alt-right listeners. Those certainly aren't progressives. They're going to be downvoting that. Like, so he knows how many people that listen to him is alt-right. And we've gotten a lot of this. This is an alt-right conference. This is an alt-right conference. And this is a terrible misunderstanding of politics. Mm-hmm. In fact, do you want to hear what alt-right is? If I can explain, like we actually got an alt-right comment on our podcast when our podcast with Sargon of Akkad, and the alt-right person is taking issue with me when I said that culture has nothing to do with race. That American culture is just that, American culture. It's a melting pot. It does not matter what color we are or what mix of colors we are. It all matters about what we believe in our culture. So this was the response. This is what someone in the alt-right would say. He said, in the United States, race is vital to culture and existence of our nation. Antifa is on the march saying no Trump, no wall, no USA. In Berkeley, they had signs saying this is war. He goes, they waved Mexican flags there. That they said, this is because a large portion of Mexicans, especially the more brown they get, there are Mexican nationalists. Or south of the U.S., they believe that the U.S. belongs to Mexico or even the Aztecs. They're African-American, they're African people. They're relatively isolated in dense pockets in different parts of the nation, leading to black power voices like the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam, who lead and run undercover campaigns during BLM rallies. Black nationalists. Yes, in the U.S., culture is dependent on race. The existence of the country as a whole depends on it. That's an alt-righter. So he's mad at me when I say race is not dependent on culture, and he's calling me out saying, yes, it is. And I responded back to that saying, no, it's not. So, I mean, this idea that we're alt-right, some people don't understand what it is. You cannot call garden variety conservatives alt-right. And you certainly can't call liberals like Sargon, who have some issues with kind of collectivist thought. That's his main point. It's liberalism and individualism. You can't call that alt-right. It's just not the definition.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I can, without being able to look deeper into it and myself taking what you say at face value, then like, okay, that's fair. But honestly, I'm just, there's nothing that's going to get me past the harassing of rape victims, and sure. the minimizing of domestic abuse and sexual assault and assault against women. And here's the thing.
That's fair.
I just don't believe Sargon is pro-rape. I've listened to a ton of videos where he says, I want to reduce the amount of rape, and I think these are the best strategies to do it. And he also said we'll probably never get rid of rape. And that's probably an unfortunate reality, too. We'll probably never get rid of murder. So I guess in my heart, and all I can do and all MM can do is make a judgment. I just don't believe he's pro-rape or pro-harassment.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I don't, to be honest, I don't think it matters what's in his heart of hearts. Because what matters are the things that he says and the tools that he uses to stir people up and get YouTube views. And that has been to tweet out harassment against rape victims and to minimize domestic violence and sexual assault. You know what I mean? I don't care what's in his heart at that point, because he can be as principally against it all he wants. If he's willing to actually use it as a weapon to hurt people, the threat of it, the jokes about it, then I don't give a shit what's in his heart, because what's in his heart and the real world impact that he's having are two completely different things. And what his intentions are meaningless to me in comparison to what his actions are.
Sure, and that is a fair assessment, and that's absolutely your right to have that as an opinion. I mean, again, bringing it back to Bill Maher, he lost a lot of people that aren't coming back after he used the N-word, a couple months back. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. And we're not asking that everybody be a fan of Sargon or Armored or Shoe or Ron or Batman and Jesus for that matter. All we're saying is, look, we think this is interesting. These topics, they're being talked about whether we like them or not. They're already happening on YouTube. Sargon is already debating SJWs, if you will, I guess, on YouTube. These conversations are already happening. Why can't we just have these conversations live? And, I think people are really interested. And, it's something that, again, if we're looking to make these conferences unique and to bring interest back in there, we need to start looking at what people are already doing online, and that's what's happening. And I totally get it. I totally get that you don't like them, and that crossed the line for you. That's totally your right. And but at the end of the day, he still has over 700,000 people on YouTube that do like him. So if we are going to challenge him or anybody else, why not? Right?
What? I mean, because of the way that he acts. I mean, there have to be other people who are better to have that conversation, who have not weaponized rape and sexual assault against victims. You know what I mean? Like, you keep going back to this argument of how popular he is, and I mean, if that's what you've got, that's kind of gross to me, honestly. Sure. I mean, I guess I don't really know how to proceed from there, because, like, for example, if you were setting up a debate with Armored Skeptic, for example, he's a guy that I can look at and I haven't watched every video he's ever put out or everything that he's ever said, nor have I for any of these folks, if I'm being honest. But, like, I gotta say, despite the fact that I think his views are shitty, despite the fact that I think he's sometimes dishonest, again, I don't think he's the kind that incites harassment against people or uses awful things like rape or sexual harassment as weapons against people. So, like, if he's invited to your conference, I'm probably not buying a ticket, but I'm probably also not, yelling and screaming saying that this conference shouldn't even be fucking happening. You know what I mean? Right.
And yeah, I get it. But, but the other thing that we've gone through, unfortunately, is on the other side, we've been harassed constantly. There's a month and a half of harassment, to the point of where my wife can't even work on her social. She's a professional social media PR consultant and crisis manager. And she won't even go near it anymore because of all of this hate that's coming from the other side. And, how is it right? How are the tactics right to, if we're saying Sargon's an harasser, why is it right to then use those tactics against people that are on the other side? I really think this is an opportunity for everybody to learn how to coexist and what tactics to actually use to win people's hearts and minds over. I mean, I'm not holding it against these people. It is what it is. We're moving forward with our thing. But does it suck going through it? Absolutely. Getting thousands of notifications a day calling us, white nationalists, rape apologists, this and that. I mean, I'm freaking Mexican. To be called a white nationalist is really bizarre to me. But it is what it is. I get people, they have their opinions. It's social media. It's kind of an open. It's a playground. But
And where does it end, though? So if we're stained by Sargon stain, then are you stained because you interviewed us? And then is the person that interviews you about interviewing us, is that person stained? I mean, doesn't this sound like religion? Like the stain will go 7 generations from the man that commits the sin?
No, because I think there's a big difference between actually going after people and platforming people who do that. And to be completely honest, tomorrow after this goes up, I'm still not convinced that I'm going to think this conversation was worth it, to be completely honest. And that's the struggle that that's why it took me a day or two to respond to your email. Because the question that you answer is not one that I had, that I claim to have I claim to have a solid answer for. I think platforming abusers is a shitty fucking thing to do. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's worth it to have a conversation with someone who is an abuser. With someone who platforms them, that's a murkier question to me. So, that's a fair question.
Okay, but I mean, so would Eli Bosnick would be okay to platform?
Eli Bosnick doesn't harass people. He doesn't go after specific people and insult them.
In the thread, when he was talking specifically about our conference, he said, "Hi guys," and he was inviting a conversation. The post was okay, but in there he said that he was specifically referring to Armored in June and said that they are garbage people, and said that they were miserable pieces of shit. That's a quote. In fact, June wandered in there. It was an open Facebook thread, got upset, and then some of our followers came in to defend her again. So is that enough to forever deny a platform to Eli, or is that just a bad move by Eli?
You're a miserable piece of shit is not the same thing as saying I wouldn't even rape you. Like, again, you guys are making outrageous comparisons because saying that I think someone has bad character, I think you're a shitty person, I don't like you as a person, that is not the same thing as using rape as a weapon against you. Like you keep drawing these comparisons that aren't accurate.
No, but instead, here's the comparison: is Eli's using rape for a laugh. So again, Sargon, what is he doing? He's using that for a laugh, right? And so I understand what you're saying. The situations are absolutely, they're different. But should they be held accountable because of one bad joke or one bad statement? I don't think so. I mean, this is where these entertainers are. And
and here's the other thing. I want to tell you a story about Eli Bosnick. Okay, Eli, in the course of a fundraiser that they did with Cognitive Dissonance, they did a skit where they were making fun of another podcaster. It was a send-up satire thing, and Eli used me in a joke in a way that I didn't appreciate. And it was pointed out to me by somebody. It was a trans joke. It made me uncomfortable. And when I reached out to Eli and said, "Hey, I heard this thing you did. Talk me through this. What's going on?" He explained it to me, and I said, "Yeah, that makes me pretty uncomfortable. I was kind of hurt by that." And Eli's response was, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Tell me more." And he listened, and he apologized, and he made a promise to do better. And he now messages me on Facebook whenever there are jokes like involving trans stuff, involving stuff like that. He messages me and says, "Hey, is this too far?" And if I say like, "Oh yeah, not sure I would do that," he doesn't do it. So sure. even if we're if we're talking about the people who sometimes go far and make mistakes, then I would say, sure, maybe Eli is one of those people. But Eli is also an intellectually honest person. He listens to people who criticize him, and he actually does better when people say, hey, this thing you did hurt me. He comes back and says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's not what I meant. I'm going to do better next time. He doesn't say, I'm not going to lie, I was trying to be provocative. I wasn't being respectful. I was being condescending and childish, and leave it at that. So let's just dispense with the Eli Bosnick comparisons, because it's not the same thing.
Okay. But that, if you want to make that's fine. But now you're also then kind of asserting that Sargon is not capable of what Eli is. And I'm not against
I didn't say he's not capable. As far as I know, he's never done it. So
okay, that's where you're wrong, though. This is why I've done a lot of. I feel like everyone I've talked to, I'm much more informed on, because I've watched so many more of Sargon's videos than they have. I'm so much more familiar with this. So, and in some ways, I kind of brush it off as people just not knowing. So, do you know who feminist Lacey Green is?
Yeah.
Okay, so at VidCon in Anaheim this summer, right? Lacey Green and Sargon had a talk, and this is kind of well known. They both talked about this. And
yeah, I'm aware of the situation you're talking about.
Where he realized that he has gone over the line and apologized to Lacey Green at length, and they were talking for hours and hours and hours, and admitted to me that's growth. That's he said, I was too hard. I did not realize what I was doing to you. So again, he's the place of ignorance, just like Eli. He didn't intend to offend you. He didn't think that he was going over the line. You told him that he was. He heard you. And Lacey does the same thing. You've gone over the line, Sargon. And he backs off. He shows remorse to that. That's public, and they're on speaking terms. So, I mean, to me, that's growth.
Yeah, but there's the context that you're missing is that never happened until after Lacey started courting the anti-feminist, the anti-SJW, the borderline alt-rightish people. So, like, I'm not a fan of claiming that I know what's in people's heads, but that's really suspicious to me.
Well, I would say that actually happened after they met in person. And again, what we're doing is bringing people together in person, because it's a lot easier to have these flame wars online. But as soon as you're face to face with somebody, then you can actually challenge them. Like you said, you had a telephone call with Eli. That is powerful. It's now you're out of the online world and spitting fire and all that stuff. Now you're talking as people. And again, that's what we're doing. We're bringing people together, and hopefully we get growth out of it, and we evolve together.
All right. Well, honestly, I mean, that's all I got. I think if we go any further, we're going to keep going round and round on making the same points over and over again.
Sure. I just wanted to say that I really respect you for having us on, and I really respect you for coming out with your viewpoints in such a good way.
Yes.
Coming after us but in a respectful way. You haven't been disrespectful. I've learned a lot from what you're saying. You're saying, look, that rape threats are not, or the rape joke or political statement.
Yeah.
That you're saying that's gross. That's over the line for you. Yeah. I get it, and I think you're fair to say that. That's absolutely the over the line for you. Yeah. For others, I think we've got to give everyone their own space to do it. But I really think that this kind of conversation, this has made, I think this, even though we're not agreeing on much, although I am a huge Star Trek fan, so we agree on that too. But I mean, I do think that there's real value in having this conversation. And I think what we intend to do, especially after the MythCon, is to reach out to those that have different views, because like playing in your own field, I don't think is productive as engaging respectfully with people of differing opinions. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kat. And thank you for talking to us, because again, like, there's hundreds of freaking blogs of people painting a picture of us and Milwaukee and everything else that have never talked to us. And this is, we appreciate the professional courtesy. We would extend that to anyone that we're critical of as well. And I think that's where you can get to the bottom of where people are coming from. And we really, really appreciate it. I understand you don't see value necessarily in this one, but hopefully another one that we have coming up, we can bring some other things on that you will find value in, and when we keep moving forward.
But even just the respectful criticism,
yes,
we appreciate, because we've gotten so much disrespectful criticism. Like this, we've heard you.
Yeah.
But when it comes in a disrespectful way, it bounces off. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the I appreciate the appreciation, if I can be redundant. I just, there's, and part of the reason that I was hesitant to have this conversation is because there's just, I don't think there's anything that anyone can say to me to make me okay with this. At the risk of being impolite, I gotta wonder about the character of someone who this isn't over the line for. Like I said, I don't want to go outright and make insults and that kind of stuff. I just, that's I guess that's my final thought is, I'm not one for harassment. But I am very much in favor of making it harder to platform abusers and platform bigots. There's obviously a conversation to be had about tactics, and I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about. So obviously I don't want to comment on specific things people have said or done. But I am 100% in favor of making it harder to do what you guys are doing, to be honest. And I guess, I don't know, I guess that's my final thought, but I appreciate you guys coming on, because I don't know. I haven't listened to. I know you guys have done other appearances and stuff, and I don't know if you guys have been hardcore challenged or not. And I appreciate it. It's why I was up front in the email that it was probably going to be a super contentious conversation. So I appreciate you guys coming on despite that. And I guess that's what I got.
No, I think it's beneficial. Thank you for the constructive conversation.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kelly.